All right. Hey, we are starting a brand new unit here, and our new unit is taxonomy. All right. Taxonomy is different from taxidermy. All right. Taxidermy is when you go hunting and shoot a deer and want to get it mounted to hang up in your basement or something. That's taxidermy. Taxonomy is just the science of classifying organisms. So in science, we like to have things neat and orderly and try to put organization on chaos. And taxonomy is just that in the world of living things. So how do we sort? How do we organize? How do we classify? How do we know what things are more closely related to other things? And we'll talk about how that works here today and why it's an important system to have. So why on earth do we need to classify? I think of this example that I got from somewhere else. We've all been to, different chain stores. You've been to Walmart or Hy-Vee or Target or other stores that are out there. And we all know roughly the layout of those stores before we go walking into them. Every grocery store in the United States probably has milk in the same section as eggs and butter and cheese and those kind of things. We organize it based on dairy, right? Every grocery store in the United States probably has apples next to oranges and bananas and strawberries and those kind of things because it makes it easier for the consumer to find what they are looking for and be efficient with the time in the store. Think about a store that was just organized completely randomly. All right. I want to buy some milk, that's in aisle 4. I want to buy some cheese, that's in aisle 7. I want to buy some butter, that's for sale outside the store. And so it would be a hugely inefficient system. It has the exact same materials in there, but we would spend way more time trying to sort and go through all of that in order to find what we need. Same thing, this is probably less relevant now because you guys don't download music as much. But if you imagine when we are, whether it's on Netflix or whether it's on, other TV streaming shows or your own Spotify library or whatnot, we have playlists, we have, labels by songs and artists and what CD it's on, those kind of things. If all of your media was just labeled, song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4, song 5 without any kind of organization, that would be tough. Same thing if you were browsing for what to watch on TV and episode 1 of this show was episode 1 of The Walking Dead was found in this category, and then episode 2 on Walking Dead is 13 pages later after you get through Netflix. So it's important that we classify, organize, and sort things for the ease of processing all of that data. All right. Think back just to, it's an old looking Amazon clip now, but even when you're shopping online or something, you have, hey, you click on men's clothing and there's different options there. You click on electronics and here's, TVs. So it's important to process lots of information. You have to organize it and sort it and that kind of thing. The same is true when we have, a million different species on planet Earth. So not only do we need to have a good way to classify things, we have to have a common way to name things, right? Because we all, probably a lot of us in this class are from different parts of the world even, or from different backgrounds. I myself grew up in Iowa, and then I came up to Minnesota for work. And I found that there are strange things that Minnesotans say that we don't have those words in Iowa. And so it can be misleading or confusing. All right. So in biology, we create a consistent naming protocol so that we can communicate with scientists, not only, in our own areas, but in different parts of the world with scientists that speak different languages from us. And so that we can effectively communicate what exactly species we are talking about. Here are some confusing names coming up. All right. These 3 are all different kinds of lions. Now, most of us would just call that bottom right a lion. But in the top left, that's a sea lion. And the top right, that's an ant lion. Are those 3 related to each other? Well, like kind of. The sea lion and the lion are probably more closely related to each other. But if I tell you there's a lion outside, and it ends up being an antlion, you probably have very different expectations than if it were a sea lion or an actual lion. Same thing here. We've seen this one before probably, but these three are a panda bear, a koala bear, and a black bear. One of these is not actually a bear, and it's the koala. That's because a koala is a marsupial, even though it has all of the right qualifications. There's a good one. Um, other confusing common names that we have. Sea monkeys are not mammals at all. They're invertebrates. Fireflies are lightning bugs. They're the same organism. They're insects. Ringworm is actually not a worm. It's a fungus that people can get on their skin. A jellyfish is also not a fish, even though it has fish in the name. It's an invertebrate. Spider monkeys are definitely not spiders. They're monkeys, so they're mammals. Crayfish, not fish. They're crustaceans. And then seahorses are fish. They are not mammals or horses whatsoever as you're going there. Not only can we have, some inconsistency with how we name things, oftentimes common names can be just straight misleading. Okay. Are all gray wolves gray? No, they're not. They could be white, black, any shade of gray and still a gray wolf. Right. Even though it might be, hey, there's a white wolf there. Well, it's actually a gray wolf. Like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Are all black bears black? Nope. They can also be brown or kind of grayish color. Or so they can be cinnamon in color, even though it's a black bear. And the last one, which is more venomous, a water moccasin or a cottonmouth, those are actually the same animal. Right? Depends on if you're the north, we tend to call it a water moccasin in the south as a cottonmouth. So like I said, very misleading common names there. That leads us to one of my favorite segments, and that is if you've been born and raised in Minnesota, you probably say some very weird things without you realizing you say some weird things. And it took me coming from a different state, moving here, another state that speaks English a lot, and they have a lot of similarities. We just say some things differently. For example, Minnesotans call this a hot dish, where most of the rest of the world calls that a casserole. All right, so you've had, maybe you've heard of tater tot hot dish before. Everyone else calls it tater tot casserole in there. This game played in elementary schools. The rest of the world calls that duck, duck, goose. In Minnesota, they play duck, duck, gray duck. All right, and if you don't believe me, that is an actual fact. Here's a look. The average person in the United States calls it duck, duck, goose, except for Minnesota for whatever reason. Who knows why? What cultural tendencies are left over as to why there's a different name. Same thing. I don't know, for basketball players out there, this is actually a personal one for me. At a different point in my life, I was a basketball coach, and I was a new freshman basketball coach. And I remember the head coach was talking about playing this game with the team, and it's a common basketball game. If you're playing basketball in Minnesota, they tend to call it lightning. In Iowa, we always called it knockout. And so he was telling me, "Oh, you're gonna get in line. We're gonna play lightning." And I kind of gave him this look like, "Hey, I don't know what lightning is." And I'm sure that he's my boss. And I'm sure at the time he was thinking, "Oh my gosh, I hired somebody that has never played this very basic basketball game before." But like I said, I grew up calling it a different name. Once we were able to establish that, I quickly reversed his suspicions there. But it could have been in something more serious than a game of basketball. That could have been a fatal or a huge error in communication that led to one person thinking I was not equipped to be a basketball coach. Some other things that are actually, we have more than one way of saying things just as an English language. We have mow the lawn or cut the grass. It's the exact same thing, but some people call it differently. This small body of water, what would you call this? That could be a stream or a creek or a creek. All of those are kind of, everyone's got kind of different ways that they say different things, or the reasons they call different things, or a brook. All four of those refer to small bodies of water that are moving. Things like a wallet or a billfold, oftentimes we're referring to the exact same item. Here we have a crayfish or a crawdad, and you can see the rest of these have some maps to help us out there. So crayfish or crawfish or Crawdad, exact same organism. There's different pronunciations for caramel. There's caramel and caramel. This depends on what region you're from. Different naming things there, coleslaw or just slaw, depending on where you're at. How do you address a group of people? You guys if you're in the north, you all if you're down south, y'all if you're in there. Some people pronounce it mayonnaise, other people pronounce it mayonnaise. So they got 3 syllables. Soda, pop, Coca-Cola, all those are things that are used frequently. Also, if you travel and use those words differently, it's possible that people might not understand what you're trying to say. Roundabout or a rotary circle are a lot of things. Interesting. Syrup or syrup, different pronunciations slightly there. This one's interesting. A water fountain or a drinking fountain. Unless you're from Milwaukee area, Wisconsin, you call that a bubbler. So that can be a confusing thing as you're trying to figure out what the heck a bubbler is as you're going. Pair of shoes like this, a lot of us call them tennis shoes, even though we never play tennis in them. Some people call them sneakers. There. Large expanses of roadway. Some people call them highway, freeways, those kind of things. So you can see that just in our language and in other languages too, there's this inconsistency based on regionality or different things there. And so the same is exactly true for organisms. And so we need to have a consistent naming process. So what is that process? It's used Greek and Latin root words for organisms. All right, those are 2 of them, the dead scientific languages there. And he also created a system where we place the groups into different categories or different folders. I don't want to do the grouping right now. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm skipping that. I'm going to come back to that different day. Last thing for the day is how do we name them? So they're going to have two names that we use for their scientific name. It's the last 2 levels of classification. And so, for example, Homo sapiens is us. Those are our last 2 folders that we fit into. They need to be underlined or italicized. That's going to be important. So I have to underline or italicize them. That tells people that are reading it that, hey, this is a scientific name. It's not just another term that's in the paper. The genus is always capitalized. So the first word is always capitalized and the second one is always lowercase. And it can be abbreviated as shown below there. Okay, that is our scientific naming protocols there. I'll stop there. You guys have all you need to do the assignment.